2, 3. Great. That was perfect.
Fantastic.
That was not my best clap. I'm sorry, but it's on there.
It's good enough for jazz. I'll punch it up later.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why this podcast is called Your Home for Half-Ass Claps. Is it called that, Pat?
The half-assed clap.
I don't know if that's. This is probably all going in the intro, by the way.
I would say so.
Welcome to Jukebox Zeros, where your idols come to die. I'm Lils.
And I'm Patrick.
And we're still crazy.
Oh yeah, we're still crazy and crazy and full of pretzels.
Not in like, well, you're full of pretzels. I'm full of disappointment because I went to the store yesterday to get flour to try to make something of my own. It's all gone. No flour.
Yeah, you have to go. So I bought a 20-pound bag of flour. So
Damn.
That was my trick. Maybe I should just donate some to you.
That just totally harkens back to like that 1950s. You're not gonna borrow a cup of flour from your neighbor, sort of thing.
Brother, can you spare a cup of flour?
And no one knows there's bodies in the basement. Because the 1950s had an underbelly.
Did a huge body count.
Oh, boy.
50s, that's a lot to answer for.
Before we introduce our guest, should we just go ahead and apologize? I mean, should we apologize for that?
Yeah.
All right, here is the apology section.
I'm sorry!
You got anything you want to apologize for, Pat?
I am going to apologize to our guests real quick.
Don't act so surprised. We do this segment literally every single episode.
No, and I had something prepared. I was going to apologize to our guest today for switching up albums on him kind of at the last minute.
Yeah, there's
first
a funny
time we've ever
story
done
behind
that. There is, and we'll get to it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Lils?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are you sure?
I'm never sure.
Are you
so
really
I apologize
sure?
for that.
Good.
I apologize.
I'm just glad you finally said it. Thank you. Thank you.
You want to introduce our guest, Pat?
I do. I'm actually super stoked to have this dude on. So he's coming all the way from New York City.
New
York City. Gentleman who actually used to live in the Boston area but moved out there a few years back, playing in a couple punk bands, one of which called Brociopath. We got Dante Caroselli on the show.
Nice.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Dante.
Is it possible this is our first out-of-state guest? Oh, no, wait, we had Todd on.
Am I?
We had Todd and the girls from Rock Candy.
Yeah, but
the girls,
they came to us, though. So I don't know if that's
true.
quite the same thing.
Yeah,
we're not...
Yeah, I'm bummed I can't be around all these cats I hear about usually on the podcast.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have you out here in person, have you touch my cats.
Yeah, events did not go in our favor, unfortunately.
But you know what? They're here in spirit. So just grab a pillow, pretend it's a cat. Maybe have the pillow knock some shit over on your shelf like Gunther does.
Yeah.
And then just feel
Start
really
sneezing.
guilty about it, even though you did nothing.
Right, exactly.
Oh, man. Should we just go ahead and get to our album and dispense the small talk?
Yeah, because
I have a feeling Dante is going to have like some things to say about this particular album.
Sure. I would say
yeah.
Or at least the band in question.
Yeah, the band we're talking about has a big old weird history to them.
Okay. The Misfits. Whether you're familiar with their music or not, you've definitely seen their logo. Their single Horror Business featured a black and white depiction of B-movie horror villain The Crimson Ghost, whose image was jocked by the group and has gone on to become an iconic mainstay of punk and goth iconography. But beyond creating a classic subcultural image, the Misfits are regarded as one of the greatest, most influential, and more endearing punk acts of the late 1970s and much of the 1980s. Their albums Walk Among Us and Earth AD/Wolf's Blood were integral hallmarks in the development of hardcore punk, and their unique songs, laden with references to pulp science fiction and B-grade horror films, are credited as the prototype to the development of the subgenre of horror punk. It also launched the career of vocalist Glenn Danzig, who applied a smooth, sort of crooning vocal style inspired by Roy Orbison and Elvis Presley to contrast the band's abrasive sound. In spite of the high regard the Misfits have enjoyed over the years, the band has consistently been at odds with themselves. After the band's initial breakup in 1984, the band enjoyed a second wave of popularity, which led to re-releases of material and subsequent royalty battles between Danzig and longtime bassist Jerry Only. After contentious settlement, Only revived the Misfits with veteran Misfits guitarist Doyle von Frankenstein to tour and perform new material under the banner. That's where we come in. Originally, this episode was going to be focused on the 1997 album American Psycho, the first released album without Glenn Danzig on vocals, and introducing brief vocalist Michale Graves, whose arrival was met with some scorn by fans and critics. But here's the problem. We ended up listening to American Psycho, and it turned out to be not that bad. Yeah.
At least for you.
Yeah. In any case, you didn't listen to it?
No, I have listened to it.
Okay, then
it is fine.
Then it's entirely on my shoulders.
I gave a listen. I got a
uploading.
page of jokes about American Psycho for.
Okay, just go ahead and throw us one without any context right now. Just why not?
Yeah, I want to hear one. I want to hear notes on Mars Attacks.
Are they trying to be a pop punk band? Note 1.
Nailed it.
Great, we got it.
Yep,
we had sound effects.
That's the bell. We got it.
Oh,
in any case, I kind of decided, now I'm learning for all of us, so now I feel like an asshole, that there wasn't enough badness happening to really commit an entire episode to. Fortunately, though, we have a backup. Michale Graves lasted the whole of 2 albums as lead singer of the Misfits before quitting in 2000, which led to the band going on a brief hiatus. They reconvened the next year to tour, now minus Doyle, and now featuring Jerry Only on both lead vocals and bass. Following 2003's Project 1950, an album of 1950s cover songs in the Misfits horror punk style, a new proper studio album would not arrive until 2011's The Devil's Reign, named after a William Shatner film with the same title. The album was released to widely mixed fan reaction and overwhelmingly negative reviews from critics, who considered the Jerry Only fronted configuration of the Misfits to be their all-time worst. But what about us? What do you say we dig up Devil's Reign by the Misfits?
Let's do it. Kicking on back to the classic punk years of 2011.
Was that a good year for punk? I wasn't paying attention. I haven't paid attention to punk music in quite a while.
It wasn't a good year for anything.
The 2010s in general.
20. For me,
Dante field that one.
For me, the 2010s were kind of an odd time because there was such a great blow up of punk and pop punk in the mid aughts, after that Blink-182 explosion of 99, all these bands started getting huge, and you had all these great records come out. And then in the 2010s, things kind of started shifting. You got more of the emo stuff. And that was getting old. So this as a Misfits record, as a classic punk act, this is a very strange time for this to come out. And were we talking 10 years before any original material by this band?
I think even longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was their first since the one that they did in 99. What was it called? Something Scary Monsters or something?
Famous Monsters.
Famous Monsters.
Famous Monsters.
Which isn't that bad.
That
American
Misfits that Misfits album, what's it called? We're all a bunch of spooky boys?
Yeah.
I love
the cover of that. They're doing a boy band thing. They're all kind of posing, and I think it's even a drawing, but they're all, shirtless, of course, and yeah, they going with that classic style.
Make some noise. We bunch of spooky boys.
I will admit fully going into this that I know absolutely but about the Misfits beyond the most surface level understanding of some of the songs. So yeah, we're gonna get Road Rat 15 again for sure, Pat. That's
for sure. And I think one of the misconceptions that people have about me is that, you know, I'm a big prog head and that I don't like punk. It's actually quite untrue. There's actually like a period of time where I was actually checking out a lot of punk bands, and the Misfits was actually one of them. It was kind of around like the mid 2000s. I was kind of dipping into some of these like older punk acts, just kind of for the sake of history. I think it's not really for me as a genre, but I like respect. I respect its place in history, and I think it's helped like actually realize a lot of other genres that I actually like really enjoy.
Yeah, that I kind of feel
it's
a lot
fun
the
to
same
go
way.
back. Yeah, it's growing up, like, it was one of those bands I was supposed to like because, you know, they had a lot of T-shirts here and there. So I didn't really get into them until, you know, I was an adult. Like, I wasn't, you know, buying their records as a, you know, 14-year-old little guy learning my downstrokes on the guitar.
Yeah, they kind of had like weird periods of popping back up in popularity. One of them being I remember around like 96, 97 when American Psycho came out, because my brother had it on CD, which was the first time that I heard it. And yeah, then they kind of like popped up in popularity again around the mid to late aughts, because like bands like My Chemical Romance and like these other sort of what was that other fucking band with Davey Havok?
AFI?
Yeah.
Like those types of bands were citing Misfits as like a huge influence, so they had like a huge uptick in popularity again, which I'm guessing this is in response to that, but it's definitely feeling a bit too late. 2011 feels a lot a big that's a big chunk of time past like 2007, I'd say.
I mean, talking about a band like AFI, you cited, they were a band for years and had a shitload of albums before they blew up and got into the mainstream. And they were, if you listen to the music and look at their imagery, they're all about that Misfit stuff. So that influence was there from the Misfits. But now, I mean, when we're talking about this album that came out in 2011, I can't help but think about it like we're talking about any classic rock act that, hey, we're 30 years into the career, we've gone through all these lineup changes, our old fans are old, and now what do we do? I see a big identity crisis here.
Oh, for sure. Before we get into the tracks, like, I also, like, since we were talking about the Misfits just popping up in random places, I did not know until I was doing, like, research for this that they not only had a brief stint in the WCW as, like, a backup for, I think, for Sting, I think.
Record scratch what?
But they also appeared in one of the Juggalo movies, Big Money Hustlers.
Oh, man! I have seen that movie.
You have?
Wow.
Yes, I have.
Way to bury the lead.
That's so fun. I forgot that they were in it, though.
We should just be doing an entire podcast on that.
On the fact that Patrick Barry, have seen the movie Big Money Hustlers.
That's the title. I, Patrick Barry, have seen the movie Big Money Hustlers.
The fucking Violet J shouting at me to, "Where's my money, motherfucker?"
Motherfucker.
Faku. That's how he pronounced it.
Whose money, Mr. Big Baby? My money, motherfucker.
Should we just go ahead and get into the tracks now, you think?
Yeah, let's dive in. We got a lot of them.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah. This is a 16-track album, which maybe it's just because we've all gotten a little older, but I have less patience for, like, albums that go over maybe like 13 or 14 tracks at this point.
Me too.
Yeah.
Getting old.
And were people still buying CDs in 2011?
I'd assume not, because like by that point,
remember. That was like the end of it, right?
I don't know when Spotify came around, but you got to figure by that point, iTunes and like all these other services had plenty of time to gestate and just sort of replace CDs and all that sort of stuff.
This was like the very beginning of mainstream people like stopping buying CDs and like shifting to digital. Definitely by 2010, 2011. Because that was around the time there was a huge uptick in smartphone sales too. So that's just how people were getting their music.
Right. All right. Let's dig into the album now. Here's our first track number 1, the self-titled track, The Devil's Rain.
It's pouring down, it's come for you. Shadow, furious with howl, darker than their souls, the storm arrives.
We have an anthem.
Yeah.
So even based on what little I know about the Misfits from the start, I can tell that this Jerry-only led group is very, very different from, like, the Danzig or Graves era. Like,
It's beefy.
yeah, those previous eras were, like, very firmly rooted in, like, punk music. This sounds more like watered-down power metal with a little bit of, like, bar band thrown in.
Yeah. So this is Jerry only. He's taking it on. He's saying, I can Danzig. I can do this.
I'm going to be the best Danzig.
And he Pat Boone's it. I believe that's the term that you used.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I read that in one of the reviews, too.
I was going to get to that next. Not only to mention that Only's vocal style seems to be the furthest extreme of a sound that Misfits had been playing with for a while. I mean, like, Graves, based on what we heard, was kind of going for more traditional hardcore punk, while Danzig's was also a croon that jumped back and forth between, like, smooth and snarly just as easily. Throughout this album, Jerry only is on smooth, and it gets really, really aggravating after a while, at least to me.
Yeah, it sounds fake. Like he's not selling me on it. Like Graves at first, he kind of grows on you, and he's a better singer than Danzig was, but still he's copying his style. And now with Jerry only, I don't see him as a good singer, and he's just copying the style again. But now it's like we're all on to you. We know what you're trying to do.
Like, it kind of sounds like he's trying to do Danzig's thing just because he feels like he has to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not quite
very
landing.
disingenuous.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, the thing that I kept coming back to in my mind about this specific style of singing, it's like discovering, like, a metal band whose vocalist is an opera singer. Like, it's a neat novelty for maybe 1 or 2 songs, but an entire album's worth of it is very, very taxing unless that's your specific niche.
Or your fetish. Yeah.
Yes, or your fetish. We don't kink shame opera singers here.
Yeah. If you want to listen to Nightwish, be my guest.
And, like, this isn't even to suggest that Only's voice is unpleasant necessarily. It's just, why?
It's why, and the nature and the groove of the song is it's theatrical. Which, you know what, Misfits have always been theatrical. That's part of the thing. But this, you got to dig through this album to find a punk song that's kind of fast. Like, they're all kind of, we'll hear, they're all kind of mid-tempo things like this. And
this is a mid-tempo chug.
But almost every song on here, I just see a Broadway production of. Like, I realize it's based on a movie. I haven't seen the movie, but I'm just picturing people coming out in giant costumes, very lush.
You're picturing a Jim Steinman thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's like their whole pastiche is the B movie thing, but this sounds way too much like an A movie, just done poorly.
Yes. I keep picturing Wicked for some reason, just like a lot of witches walking around, a lot of green light, and
That's what Wicked is, a bunch of witches walking around.
Yeah. And this song is just too slow. I wrote that a lot.
Yeah. Like, by this point, I think Jerry only would have been, like, 52, and I don't want to be, like, one of those people that just suggests, like, you're too old to play this kind of music anymore, but it feels like there's a lot of energy missing at this point. Whether that's because of his age or whether it's because he's not as interested in doing this as he used to be, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think with his voice being so up front, too, it really makes itself obvious that it's disingenuous and him just trying to cop Danzig's style. another big problem I have, and there's more obvious offenders later on the record, is there's way too much melodyning or auto-tuning happening on the vocals, enough that like when he does that sort of like crooning vocal drop, it actually like runs down the steps of the notes at a few times. Like so they're just like these weird artifacts that happen here and there that were really bothering me, which is sort of a hallmark of rock production post 2010 anyway.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the next track, but I'll also say if this track is an indicator of how the rest of the album is not going to go, that's not great.
Yeah, not off to a great start.
All right, here's track number 2, titled Vivid Red.
Deep inside me, demons inside me, vision blurs. The horrors that I see, the hell that surrounds me, and it burns. The voices that I hear come out of nowhere, so clear.
Okay, cool. More bar band power metal.
Yeah, but we're picking up a bit. Like, I could see if you're a Misfits
bit.
fan, this kind of sounds like the older stuff.
This is about the tempo of Die, Die, My Darling.
Yes.
We're kind of getting there.
I would have liked that first track. That first track clocks in at 3.5 minutes. I would have liked that first track as like an intro type thing, like maybe a nice little 20-second, 30-seconder, and then into this, like as our first proper song.
That probably would make it sound better.
Yeah.
I'll give you
But
that.
this is a good like fist in the air kind of anthemic.
Yeah. Listening to this, I was kind of struck by how repetitious the riff was, which, I mean, that's standard fare for punk rock, but slowed down to the speed it is, it kind of sounds like it's trying more to be like a metal song. And since metal is so focused on riffs, it's just like a contrast that just really stuck out to me. Like, what's the riff that we have here? Just that constant da-na-na that's repeated pretty ad nauseum. Yeah,
so, I mean, at this point, a lot of punk bands and metal bands have both cited Misfits as influence. Like Metallica's covered a bunch of their shit, and so because of that, you have to wonder if they were trying to placate to two different audiences. So they have these elements of punk, but also trying to make it appeal to the metal crowd a little more too. But just kind of coming up with this half-assed vanilla pudding in between.
Little bit of pudding.
Little pudding.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing. Who is this album for? Like, where did they leave off? We had a cover album of old school rock and roll tunes.
That's right,
as
Project
their last
1950.
album.
That was very much for Jerry only, that one.
Oh yeah,
that's for him and his dad.
So by that same token, I got to imagine this one's also for Jerry only, so he can continue to hold on to the trademark.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I mean, he's certainly trying to keep the thing on brand.
Because this would make so much more sense as just a new project with Jerry only and all the rest of the crew in it.
Yeah, but he's also trying to ape the Misfits sound enough that, like, you can't get away with that. If he tried to make this something different, it would get accused of being a Misfits album, and people would be like, why not just call it Misfits album? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it tries enough from that to warrant that. I don't know.
Yeah. And talking about like who they're playing for and like bands citing them as influences, like this has all the Misfits stuff. It's got the horror imagery. It's got, and this song, I don't know if it's the recording I heard, but it sounds a little more lo-fi than the other tracks. Maybe
I noticed
just because
that
the internet.
too. Actually, no, I've listened to it on Spotify, and there was a couple tracks that were definitely of a different quality. I don't know if they were mixed by someone else. I didn't get a chance to. It looked like it was only mixed by one guy, but yeah, I noticed a bit of unevenness there too, in between the tracks.
Okay. It's also worth noting this. I believe this is the first album with Des Cadena of Black Flag fame. Black Flag fame.
Oh yeah.
Oh, is that word?
So
there's actually quite a.
It's still a I believe a 3-piece band.
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of like punk clout behind like the making of this. Like obviously Jerry Only from the Misfits, Des Cadena, like you mentioned, former Black Flag guitarist. The drummer was former Murphy's Law drummer Eric Arce. Not to mention the record was produced by Ed Stasium, who produced records by the Dickies, Reverend Horton Heat, Biohazard, and the Ramones. So that's like a lot of people with rich histories and connection to punk, and it all came together to make this thing, which is very weird to me.
Very weird, and from what I've... Yeah, some good Misfits vanilla pudding here. From what I've read, everybody was kind of... there was a lot of hands on this. Like, everybody was kind of active in it, including the producer, guitar player, everybody. So not just Jerry Only.
Anyway, should we move on to track number 3?
Let's do it.
All right. Track number 3. This one is titled Land of the Dead.
Land of the dead. Tonight. Land of the dead.
So now we're starting to dip a little further into like more classic sort of Misfitsy sounding kind of stuff, at least tempo wise.
We're getting there, but it's not fast enough. Like this is I'm hearing like alternative here, you know?
Yeah.
But you know what? We get some whoas finally.
Yeah, we mentioned AFI earlier, and I am getting huge AFI sort of vibes from this song.
Yeah.
And Offspring.
Yes, and Offspring. That wasn't what I was thinking, but now, like, I can't get that out of my head.
Yeah, now you can't hear it.
I mean, like, I guess it's a little bit closer to classic Misfits than, like, that bar metal that we've been hearing, but it still sounds off. And once again, like, and this is, I'm going to be saying this a lot, I'm sure, but it's that fucking voice that Jerry Only puts on.
It's too deliberate. I don't know.
It's sticking out like a sore thumb.
When Danzig did it, like, he kind of did the Elvis thing where he would kind of like warble his mouth a bit, and it worked because you didn't hear all the fucking stupid vocals, but it still kicked ass because he was still, doing his Danzig thing. He's just singing too articulately, so you notice what the fuck he's saying the whole time, and it's fucking stupid.
Yeah,
and it's been pissing me off that it sounds like Jerry Only is double tracked on most of this stuff. Whereas I don't think Danzig's vocals were on the old albums, which I think was part of the charm.
Yeah, that feels like a production technique that might have been a little too pristine for, like, classic Misfits.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Danzig's voice didn't really call for a lot of double tracking.
No.
Yeah, just, you didn't need to. It was powerful enough and kind of smooth enough. But yeah, I noticed that there was a lot of double tracking done on his voice here, and it's wasn't a good idea. It didn't help like strengthen the vocals at all. I almost wonder if it would have been less distracting if they didn't do that.
I mean, maybe like this whole croon voice could be forgiven if Jerry Only was able to switch it up throughout the album a little more, like, do some croon and then scream or growl or something like that. But nope, he just sort of runs on this autopilot for much of the album.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah.
You just Pat Boonin' it the whole way.
Yeah.
Pat Boonin' it. But Lils, you may ask, what about Dave Vanian from The Damned? His delivery was a crooning sort and you like them. To which I reply, get out of my house. You're supposed to be quarantined. And I will say, yes, the difference between Jerry Only and Dave Vanian is, yes, Vanian also performs in a syrupy sweet croon to contrast the sound of his band, but even he knew when to apply some more sort of roughness and grit to, like, certain parts of Damn tracks.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that Michale Graves got shit on so much for not being Danzig in those middle albums, but now that he's gone, we kind of miss him, don't we?
Yeah, he's kind of carved out quite a cult following at this point.
Oh, yeah. And in retrospect, like, his voice, maybe just because the recording was better than versus the recordings that Danzig was on, but his voice is more powerful and sounds good in the Misfits mix, and Jerry only isn't really doing it for me.
Yeah, if you're going to be a band that's going to continue on without your original singer, and especially a singer who has such an iconic voice, you kind of left to go in two different directions, right? You either find someone who can mock the voice well enough that you can like keep doing the back material successfully and like believably enough, and also do some new shit, or you take it in a whole different direction and get a new singer and sort of carve out your own niche with this new sound. And a lot of times I almost have more respect for the latter, because they're not trying to capitalize on the past. They're trying to move forward and do something different and move on. Yeah, and you almost wish that they kept this other guy around a little more.
Should we move on to track number 4, you think?
Yeah.
All right, track number 4. This one is titled The Black Hole.
The black hole we know, and all the others that go down the mission, still missing. It goes far beyond the reaches of this world, to the unknown. Catapult our universe, uncharted outer space. Here we are, the aliens, an unknown threatening race.
It's kind of catchy, I'll give it that.
Cute, nice little anthem. You get some woes.
It also sounds like the theme song to a Saturday morning cartoon show. That might have been the point. I don't know.
Oh, love to death. I love the aliens. Well, something.
But yeah, it's catchy in the same way that like a more recent pop punk song just invariably gets stuck in your head by force, whether it was written that way or not. Like not necessarily because you want it to.
Exactly.
Because like so many more recent punk bands have discovered pop songwriting, not necessarily for the better.
Yeah, but I mean that's part of the appeal with those bands. So maybe this is 2011 we're talking about. This isn't that old. Like maybe maybe they were listening to some of that stuff. And
yeah, that's entirely possible.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure they were pulling from new acts.
Yeah. And I feel like if your band is putting out an album, no matter how old, you're gonna shoot a little bit for the younger audience, because your older audience is only gonna give you so much love. You got kids and shit.
Right, exactly.
So I don't have a great deal to say about this track beyond my initial complaints about the music just not meshing with the singing style. So why don't we take this opportunity to just sort of talk a bit how we feel about the Misfits in general? Like Dante, were the Misfits like a big band for you just in general, or? No,
not until, I don't know, honestly, like past 5 years. Like I started like digging into like the old stuff, because like when I grew up and was getting into music, it was all about like the Southern California like pop punk and punk bands. Bad Religion, NoFX, Blink-182, that whole world. So that was my kind of introduction into the scene. And people would talk about like Black Flag and more hardcore bands like that. And it didn't really catch my ear because I was used to this overproduced like great big pop songs.
The California is a little sunshinier than the dark New York, New Jersey band.
Exactly. Oh, and can we talk about how the Misfits are a Jersey band? Like, and right next door, you've had you got the New York hardcore scene going on. So I'm surprised we don't hear more influence in that from the Misfits. But as far as what the Misfits like mean to me, like influence wise, like as far as we gotta talk about rockabilly too. Like I don't know if it's been written in print that they contributed to that, but like it's totally there. Like you can hear it.
I know like Jerry Only himself has never been like shy to talk about how big a fan he was of like Buddy Holly and all those kinds of artists.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's a good point too, is that they probably had a pretty big influence on the psychobilly, but like more modern rockabilly movement.
Right. Bands like Necromantics and Horror Pops and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, yeah. Bands with fucking upright basses and pompadours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
DuckTales.
Did you say DuckTales?
Yeah, that's what they're called.
Oh.
The pompadours.
That's the pompadours.
I did not know that.
Duck's ass. Yeah.
We all learned something today.
Yeah.
I know this is going to disappoint a few of my more gothically minded friends who are also big horror punk fans, but I personally feel like the whole conceit around the Misfits is a little too silly for me. I feel that way about any band that relies so heavily on a gimmick that really only comes into play during the live shows. It's probably why I also never got into Guar or the Aquabats or Green Jelly or bands like that. And I don't have an explanation how I justify my love for the band Ghost either. I guess
I was just gonna say, you fucking listen to Ghost.
I don't know.
I also
their music
don't
just
mind
catches me
Ghost.
more than others.
Those songs are
They
good.
just speak to you.
Yeah. In the Misfits case, though, I often feel like they want to have it both ways, because they're singing songs about, Frankenstein and aliens and B-movie tropey stuff, and, very frequently it's just presented with a completely straight face. Is that also part of the joke, or are they completely serious? It's hard to tell because there's literally no press photos where they're smiling. I don't know.
Are the Misfits the punk rock Kiss? Is my question to you.
I think that's pretty apt.
I mean,
Although
that would
they
certainly
don't wear
make
enough
sense.
makeup.
That would certainly make sense from a merchandising standpoint at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So I actually, like I said, I kind of for historical context, dipped into a bunch of classic punk acts for a little bit, including the Misfits at one point, and they were kind of fine to throw a couple songs into a mix because they're pretty in and out pretty quick, little tracks. So even if it it doesn't hold my interest, it's over before I even notice it. But yeah, just never really. They weren't really a huge influence on me in any way. Much like any other punk band was. Yeah. This was honestly probably in anticipation for the show is the first time I thought about them in years.
Yeah. And I don't know if I can't name any contemporaries of theirs that sound like them. So maybe that's what, the appeal of what makes them so unique. Because, I'll read articles about them doing shows with the Ramones and other bands of the era. But none of them are really, sounding like them. So I guess they really were into that, the old school 1950s stuff.
I'd say the Ramones are weirdly almost the closest relative you could find to them because Ramones pulled a lot of shit from doo-wop and rockabilly culture as well.
Yeah.
They just weren't quite as spooky about it. But come to think of it, come 1980s, early 90s Ramones, actually it starts to get a little darker. You get Pet Sematary and Poison Heart and those types of stuff. Those types of songs are actually could be pretty comparably horror pop.
Yeah.
Come to think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to track 5, shall we?
Yeah.
Do it.
All right, here's track number 5, this one titled Twilight of the Dead.
And your blood runs cold. Your blood runs cold in this twilight of the dead. Blood runs cold. Cold. Your blood runs cold in this twilight of the dead.
Okay, so I don't want to spend this entire review just harping on that voice, but I will say I had hopes for this song until Jerry only opened his mouth. Again, it has that same energy from classic Misfits. It's got a very catchy riff, kind of a catchier take on a pop punk sound. I even kind of liked that, that guitar solo midway, which is not a typical thing of punk music. And then Jerry only popped in that croon. I can't get over that sportscaster wedding DJ croon.
Yeah. And this was the big single off the album, no?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I think
Big
it was.
single?
Actually, I think it might have been released previously in 2009 as a single and just re-released here.
Yeah. Again, I want to hear these songs as the soundtrack to the movie because that's what I'm just Twilight of the Dead. What's the context here?
This is their like equivalent of this is their American Idiot. You're positing.
Yeah.
So Lils, yeah, I'm with you on this track that it was kind of catchy right up until he starts singing, and it just it stuck out too much for me to ignore it. But that being said, this is kind of one of the stronger tracks to me, from what I remember.
Yeah, it's got a hook to it. It's not, a great hook, but it's I wouldn't say it's a great Misfit song,
So, like, to go back to my previous point about, like, how Jerry only was 52, and I don't want to be saying, like, he's too old for that sort of thing, but the way this song ends, like, let me just, like, here's a clip of, like, the ending of the song that just really made me cringe a little bit.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh,
now.
no. I want to be, like, reasonable, but this emanates all kinds of Axl Rose at the VMAs running onto the stage too quickly energy.
This is it's drunk karaoke, and you just don't know how to end the.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Hold on, Jerry's got to take a taco nap, guys. Hold on.
Jerry's got to take a knee, guys. Oh, enchiladas. I don't know. I don't know if that's how Jerry only sounds.
That sounds like he's more from Chicago than New Jersey.
See, I was doing kind of a weird Wisconsin accent a little bit. I'm sure he's been from everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's only Jerry.
Yeah. He's only Jerry.
There's only ever been Jerry. That's the idea.
Jared? Who's Jared?
Jared only. Isn't that his full name?
Track number 6, you think?
Yeah.
God.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's track number 6. This one titled Curse of the Mummy's Hand.
Rotting this body steals the souls of those who betray. Place your curse in his hand. The mummy's hand. The mummy's hand.
Mummy.
This is the spooky song, The Mummy's Hand. See, I hear Danzig all over this. He could have sang all these songs, but how would Michale Graves have done them? Would he have been a little more polished?
It would have
not be
like
singing about fucking mummies.
It's been rumored that Jerry Only has always wanted the Misfits to be this kind of band instead of a punk group, and like tracks like these kind of just sort of reaffirm in my mind this wasn't much of a rumor.
Yeah.
And what kind of a song is that?
I mean, like, maybe this is how we should have been reviewing it from the start as a metal album instead of like a punk album, because like arrangement-wise, so far it's decent bar metal, but it's pretty subpar punk music.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a tick not hard enough to be into the metal to be categorized that way. Like, it's still in that middle, let's call it alternative place.
Yes, alternative place.
The limbo of these two genres.
A void of subgenres.
An uncanny valley of
Yes, that's the term I was looking for.
In between punk and metal, just this weird.
We'll just call it
pudding.
Alternative. But yeah, damn, 20 years since
You're so
Danzig, and
alternative,
still
man.
emulating his voice. And I guess a lot of we were talking about that before. A lot of bands do that. AC/DC did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, even Brian Johnson kind of did his own thing a little bit.
He did, but you could the
not a good
untrained
thing.
ear would be like, yeah, same singer.
Like Survivor managed to they managed to find a guy who sounded exactly like the guy who sang on Eye of the Tiger for their next album, so much that I didn't even know that they changed singers.
And I'm sure they were conscious
Like
of that.
very much so. Yeah, I couldn't believe that the guy who sings Eye of the Tiger is not the same guy who sings the fucking other song from Rocky that they do. Broken Hearts.
I can't believe you know trivia about Survivor.
Yeah.
That's probably the saddest part of all of this.
Closet Survivor.
I need to go back to therapy.
Like, building on the whole, Jerry only secretly wanted to make this a metal band kind of through line that I have. I want to talk for a second about a very little talked about side project that occurred between the Misfits' first breakup and their reformation with Michale Graves. After Danzig buggered off from the Misfits to form Samhain, Jerry Only and Doyle were kind of left in the lurch, probably in reaction to the overly satanic messages behind Danzig's new music. Only and Doyle recruited future Misfits drummer Dr. Chud and Yngwie Malmsteen vocalist Jeff Scott Soto to form the Christian metal group Christ the Conqueror. Spelled K-R-Y-S-T. Cuz metal.
Cuz metal.
Imagine getting to sing over a Malmsteen song. What the fuck? Like, I need you to sing over some of my songs. That's my really bad Dutch accent. Is he Dutch? Is he from Wisconsin? Kind of a little bit of both.
Actually, the reasoning behind
Midwest
it only specified in an interview with the hardcore magazine Yes Zista. If I made Christ with a C, people are going to say, he's making fun of God. We've come in his name to do the job. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only's sudden turnaround towards Bible thumping was a subject of ridicule among punk scene veterans at the time, as was his insistence that Christ the Conqueror was on par with Led Zeppelin and that their music would sustain for a minimum of 3 decades.
Oof.
A minimum.
I mean, it's been 3 decades of not touring or releasing anything beyond a single EP by now, and I don't see a lot of people waxing nostalgic for Christ the Conqueror these days.
Nah, I don't see too many of those T-shirts hanging around.
Yeah, probably because they
Come back.
sound like this. Yeah, Manowar they ain't.
Nah. They like their soaring vocals, huh? They're big.
Yeah. So maybe that is sort of what Jerry Only wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can never know.
Talking about metal, this whole album has a lot more lead guitar work than we've heard on previous Misfits recording. Like, you could this is just, let's plug in this Les Paul and fucking pinch harmonic all over this baby.
I think metal. I think they were probably trying to tap in more to the metal audiences. I think that's exactly what it was. I don't know if they decided that they have more money than punks, which is probably true because fucking punks are all commies and don't work.
Yep, and metal kids have jobs. Yeah, good. It's an old joke, but a good one.
Metal kids are cops.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. They just all work at breweries, okay?
I think, during the Michale Graves era was when they started to sort of shift more towards metal, like not with American Psycho, but with Famous Monsters, I think, was when it started to dip into that a little more.
Yeah, the placement of the lead guitar in this album, though, like it's almost kind of mocking, like it's almost kind of comical.
It's, the leads aren't great.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have. I happen to like lead guitar like that when it's used in kind of a mocking tone, like and they do that all over this album. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely something you should be using sparingly.
Yeah, it takes away from them trying to be serious about the curse of the mummy's hand.
Oh, you got to be serious about that curse.
Oh,
It's a curse.
That's mummy. I'd be scared of the mummy.
Theme from Indiana Jones.
I was in the supermarket a while ago and I saw a box that said, "Yummy Mummy," and I thought, the curse.
It was just a box of blueberry.
Turned
it wasn't even the one with the
turned
mummy
out to
on
be
it.
a new Ben and Jerry's flavor.
And then I thought, what's it doing in the cereal aisle? Where am I?
The mummy's melting.
This isn't a supermarket. These aren't my hands.
This is not my beautiful cereal.
Oh, Jesus. We're bringing it back. David Byrneland.
Previous episode callback.
So, I forget where were the Misfits on any of the Ozzfests of the later 90s?
I don't know.
Would not be surprised.
Because that would actually I feel like they might have been or like they were definitely on tour with metal bands. So I feel like that's kind of where they gained a lot of that audience. So yeah, there probably was, some consideration there as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Did the Misfits play Ozzfest? If you know the answer, text 3 to Ozzy, and he will shout at me from his house.
Yes, text
Vote
3 to
now.
Ozzy and he will shout at Patrick.
Vote now if you want to see the Misfits on the next Ozzfest.
Text 4 for yes and 3 for 2.
You have chosen 2, referring to 3. The correct answer was 3, referring to 2.
Let's move on to track number 7.
Yeah.
Track 7, referring to track. I don't know. Fuck it.
Please stop.
I will.
Track number 7. This one is titled Cold in Hell.
I know the end was coming one day for you. Just another tragic story. It's cold in hell. It's cold in hell, they say. It's cold.
I've made a terrible mistake bringing up that Christian metal thing. Now it's all I'm going to be able to think about every time they mention hell or the devil or something.
I really like this song. I'm a sucker for a chukka chukka punk song, and this is just a classic ABA chukka 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 chukka. It's great. Little jumpy
weirdly
tune.
thought that this song was okay too. I actually remember. I remember actually kind of being engaged a little bit with this song. This one wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I thought this one was one of the more tolerable ones on here too. I don't think it needed those extra 45 seconds of superfluous atmospheric droning at the end, though.
But it's got to be
No, it did not.
spooky.
Is that supposed to be the titular hell, which is cold?
Maybe he's descending into hell, and he's cold.
Cold hell kind of sounds like a subway station.
Where they make really shitty sandwiches.
Yeah.
Oh, Subway the sandwich. Yeah.
Yes, that's Subway.
That's what they call them. They don't call them franchises. They call them stations.
Even though I thought this was one of the more tolerable songs, boy, Jerry Only gets very silly with his delivery on this one. In a sense, just with that sort of it sounds like he sounds like he's singing it while trying to roller skate for the first time.
It's true. Maybe that's how he got into it. They strapped a microphone to him and had him sort of skate around the studio while he was also eating tacos.
The other big thing that I kept thinking of was maybe this is deliberate because he's trying to do that sort of B-movie horror show sort of affectation, of people like Elvira and Sven Gulli or something like that, which is kind of an obscure pull, but at the same time, if that's what he was going for, then well done.
Well, I mean, those characters that you mentioned are, kind of tongue-in-cheek, and again, the big problem is Jerry Only's coming off too earnest, so you're left wondering whether he's in on the joke or if he's just if this is just complete cringe.
I mean, the Misfits have never come across as, kind of laughing at themselves. But, the fact that they have that whole album of 1950s tunes is, all right, you guys gotta know that this is funny, right?
I don't think it was, though. I think it was just because Jerry Only loves 1950s music so much.
Yeah.
You punk kid, you don't understand the rock and doo-wop, dee-wop, blue-bars music.
These kids need to know what real music is.
I'm down here in New Jersey. I'm gonna go eat a Taylor ham pork roll with John Sassor.
Who told you about the Taylor ham?
And Adam Schneider, because they're both.
I have grandparents from New Jersey. I know about pork roll.
Oh yeah.
Ed Wills' grandparents. They're down here too.
Go down to the shop, right? Gonna go get some pork roll and grill it.
You gotta get the good one.
Yeah. pork roll, egg, and cheese.
I don't like that ShopRite. I like the other ShopRite. It's cold in hell. Yeah, I'm digging it. No, you don't understand. It's cold in hell.
Stop running in a circle and listen to the music.
You gotta listen. So here, this is a song.
You're not gonna get anywhere running in a circle.
Listen, I already tried that down at the studio. It doesn't really work. Made my voice sound more like Glenny.
That's the thing with these bands that are great with their stage presence and their costumes and the makeup and the outfits. What does Jerry only look like in the vocal booth? I imagine doesn't have like the full devil lock thing with the
that's
face
a good
paint.
question.
I was gonna say,
Do
he
they
has
wear
to
the
push
full
the lock.
ensemble when they're recording?
Maybe just for vocals. I mean, it makes sense. Get into character. Who is singing this song? Who is Cold in Hell? I am. I'm Jerry only.
I can hear the lock filter. No, he pushes the lock out of the way.
And I approve this message. I am picturing, though, just like Jerry only with like the full devil lock and like the black paint under his eyes and just wearing like a nice casual polo and khakis.
He's in his jammies.
Got it.
Yes, he put on a kigurumi. Track number 8.
Yeah, we're halfway through. Cool.
We're only just now halfway through. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Here's track number 8. This one titled Unexplained.
Unexplained. It's unexplained. A blinding flash of light is the last thing they would say. It's unexplained. Lost at sea in mighty feet, sent an SOS.
This one feels a little more on the nose than some of the other ones. I mean, not that they've been like using oblique and deep metaphor, but this is like Purple People Eater vibes for me.
Yeah, we've got ghosts. We've got spooky stuff. They're sound like their old selves.
Now they're just dipping
Little
into
bit, yeah.
the unexplained. Like everything is see, the thing is, like, things are like explained, right? Like everything that you know is like explained. Well, what if there's some things that are like unexplained?
They make such eerie sounds.
Like,
The coffee isn't even cold. Those are legit lyrics from the song.
that's amazing.
Wow.
I missed the coffee comment, but
Yeah.
what was that about?
I don't know.
They're throwing some
Did he mean to sing that?
domesticity into their lyrics now.
I mean, I would have to guess it's like just a sort of, it's too early in the morning for aliens.
Yeah.
The coffee's not even cold yet.
Yeah, what's his name? Daniel. Hold on. What's his name? Oh, it was Ed Stasium. He has a very sharp 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. start time. So I think they were just sleepy.
Hey, Jerry only is just like you. He puts on his devil horns one horn at a time.
Do you think he was the one who came up with the weird Jerry Lewis style staccato piano in the background?
Yeah, I believe it actually was him.
And I can't imagine Jerry
on
only
this
had any
album.
objection to that.
No, the more he can make it sound like the 1950s, the better, for sure.
I mean, I had no objection to that because I love that shit.
Yeah, same. I'm a sucker for that. But this is another borderline Chukka Chukka song. Misfits, you get one. And especially not right next to each other.
You know what I didn't hear on this
geez.
album? There was no boom boom chop on
No
this
boom
record.
boom chop?
No, we didn't get a boom boom chop on this record.
Do you mean the Phil Spector Boom Boom Chop?
Or the Beverly Hills by Weezer boom
Oh,
boom
that
chop.
okay. The classic.
No boom
none
boom
of that.
chops, no Greta Van Fleet Buenanus.
No, they're all missing.
Speaking of the Phil Spector thing, which I know we're going to get into on the following tracks, the last album of original material starts with that classic boom, 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 boom. So really,
man.
and I think
that's the
I think
Spector,
I don't
yeah.
want to give it away, but I think we get some female vocals coming up.
Classic Phil.
And yeah, again on this track, so much lead guitar. My favorite review I read of this, I think it was Slant Magazine, on a scale of Winger to Slayer, this rocks at about a Scorpions. And
That's pretty good.
yeah, right? And it's total CC DeVille all over this song. And kids, if you don't know who CC DeVille is, ask your parents.
You were probably born to him.
I actually have a bunch of different reviews right here. That same Slant Magazine review also said of the album, "The Devil's Reign is the work of a band that aspires to give the genre little more than its answer to the Monster Mash."
Yeah. Perfect.
I figure since we're like halfway through, I might as well like read off a couple of these reviews just to, see how well they're sticking.
Yeah.
Allmusic.com's Jason Lyman Grover, no Stephen Thomas Erlewine on this one, unfortunately.
He wouldn't touch it.
He said of the album, "Jerry Only may look like a devil-locked punk icon, but he sounds an awful lot like Pat Boone, and his presence behind the microphone is just as intimidating. Musically, the three-piece fares better, but is hindered by flat production and suffers from the fact that the group never tried to expand on the vocabulary established 30 years ago."
Yeah.
Keith Carman of Alt Press says, "The Devil's Reign yields little more than incredible frustration. A mixed bag with some great tunes worthy of inclusion in Misfits' second generation, yet sorely lacking in primeval vitality." And, of course, we got our requisite Pitchfork review. Aaron Leitko says in his 3.9 out of 10 review, "The Misfits shtick should stand the test of time, but The Devil's Reign makes Supernatural feel like fairly workaday stuff. Without Danzig's combustible presence, the band softened into predictability, their previous menace petering out into Scooby-Doo villainhood."
Yeah, the Scooby-Doo vibe is pretty heavy. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Track number 9. This one is titled "Dark Shadows."
Feel the wind grow stronger. See the full rise. Casting its dark shadows. The beast will feed tonight. Feel the wind grow stronger. As the pale moon grows.
So this, I don't know. I guess Jerry Only was a little ahead of the curve when it came to reviving retro properties that aren't nearly as beloved as people thought, because this is literally a song about the old 60s soap opera Dark Shadows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice pull.
It even mentions Collinwood, which was like the name of like the manor from the show. So he beat Tim Burton to the punch.
Yeah.
So he's singing a song about like what he had to watch because there was no one else home to watch him.
In the waiting room of the doctor's office when he was 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The part about feeding the beast was when he got his lollipop.
I
feed the beast with my lollipop in my tummy.
I love the idea, though, of... Because I'm sure there's an audience that gets all these B-movie references, because I know there are people out there that like this stuff. So, like, that's awesome that there's a band for them, but I don't know any of these references, so I'm having trouble with it. When the song first kicks in, it sounds like Surrender by Cheap Trick, so that was kind of weird. It's got that... Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, a little bit.
That was until he started singing, of course.
It's also got a timpani in it, so that's neat.
Yeah, you don't hear too much timpani in the punk scene these days.
Nope.
Kind of fell out of favor. Yeah. Hard to take on tour.
Fell out of favor.
Can't really put it in the van.
Ever since...
boom, boom. But who knows, man? With that Netflix shit now, like when you open it, boom, boom, maybe timpani will come back.
After the big timpani incident where Greg Ginn threw a timpani at Bob Mould.
Famous night at CBGB's.
So, like, on the whole, I was just kind of unimpressed before with, like, with all these references. I mean, I feel like long before this album, they were a lot better at, like, just sort of cloaking it in metaphor so that the song could be about like, pretty much anything. Like, even things like, Teenagers from Mars and other songs like that have, like, sort of elements of just, like, teenage rebellion and just, being misfits and all that sort of stuff.
More relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, so...
And I was going to say that the lo-finess of those early records were such a huge part of it, too, of the appeal. Yeah. And when you hear everything, like, so clean and up front, it really... It puts the absurdity right there up front in a way that doesn't really help the song. This, along with so many other songs, just sound like punk versions of Werewolf Bar Mitzvah to me. Excuse me? You don't know Werewolf Bar Mitzvah from 30 Rock? I don't know. I never watched 30 Rock. Yeah, it's really great when Halloween songs just say spooky and scary with like not in regard to anything, just the fact that those words exist. And like just maybe saying the words scary and spooky, you're somehow conjuring goblins.
It's to remind you what you're supposed to be feeling right now.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Spooked and scared.
Touching back on that timpani I mentioned earlier, whose decision do you suppose that was? Do you think that was an Ed Stasium decision?
I think that was Jeff Lynne. He came down and laid down some tips.
Yeah. Ed Stasium, in addition to producing, is also credited with additional percussion, additional guitar, keyboards, EBow, and sci-fi sound effects montage on track 16. A skill that I presume he picked up from Mark Camp's sci-fi style.
I was going to mention that. Not the first time on this podcast we've heard about sci-fi sounds. And if you look at the Misfits discography, there's I think they all have a sci-fi sounds credit.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Like, looking at the production credits, not only is Ed Stasium credited with sci-fi sound effects montage, but so is Jerry Only and Jerry Kaifa too.
And Monster Screams too.
All I can say is this had better be one hell of a sci-fi sound effects montage once we get to it.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bothered by the credit for EBow. Like, I don't know. EBow is nice and everything. There's a time and a place for it. It's not on a Misfits album. I'm not sure where the EBow fell.
That's
on
the thing.
this record,
I listened to those tracks and I didn't hear it.
There.
Like, I was looking for it.
Yeah. It's lost to time, like the saxophone that supposedly was on that Weezer track.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Buried.
Like, the Fallen Heroes.
All right.
Fallen but not forgotten.
All right. Track number 10.
We salute you.
Let's move on to track number 10. This one titled, oh boy. You thought they were unsubtle. This one, next track number 10, titled Father.
Father, have I the curse of the vampire? Do I have blood from hell in my veins? Am I an unholy beast that you sired? Is it true I bear the mark of Cain?
Hey, Pat.
Hey, Lils.
Quick question.
Quick answer.
What's the best way to differentiate your era of the Misfits as completely separate from the iconic Danza era and like just show off that they don't need their old frontman to still run shit?
That's a very
Is it by
loaded
going
question.
the inverse of your former frontman's big single after going solo and filling it with all kinds of unsubtle references to Christian ephemera?
Yeah, so the big problem
That's
is
probably not what it was.
it was not a song from the Danzig era of the Misfits. It was a solo song by Danzig from his solo project.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I know.
After he went solo.
I just wanted to reiterate that's what we're talking about.
We'll show him.
What?
Probably not, but like the similarities are kind of inescapable.
It
like,
was
with the full
definitely
context.
on my mind when I saw that.
I mean, the actual thing is a lot catchier than, just Jerry Only going, I'm going to do better than mother. Fathers are better than mothers.
Well, this was I didn't get a chance to read the lyrics, but this has something to do with vampires, did it not? Like Father,
Yeah,
I have the
it's a song
vampire's
about
curse.
vampires.
So it has nothing thematically to do with Danzig's song Mother, which was kind of like, I'm spooky, hide your daughters from me, mother.
Yeah.
Tell your bummies not to walk my way.
Oh, you got some good riffage in this song. A lot of hacky guitar, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's true what you say about how, like, looking at it on its face, it is completely different. But, like, it's hard not to make that, assumption when they name it Father and not, like, The Curse of the Vampire or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like Daddy.
Well, then you've got the Korn fans angry.
Yeah.
You can't win.
What about Mommy?
You can't.
They don't have a song called Mommy?
I don't know.
They have a song called
There must
Mommy,
be.
Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight?
Yeah.
So.
Oh,
They got-
right.
Oh, yeah.
They got
You're right.
the parents, this band.
Mm.
Yeah.
Jerry Only and Danzig don't like each other very much. And there's, like, a lot of history around that. Like, do we want to get into like that story real quick? Because it's
I'm not really familiar.
Doozy. It's a fucking doozy.
I'd like to hear
let's do the
hear what these Jersey boys
version.
are up to.
Yeah.
All right. So, as mentioned before, after Danzig left the band, Jerry Only and Doyle were kind of left in the lurch and probably feeling kind of slighted because they'd been funding the majority of Misfits' endeavors, working full-time in their father's machine parts factory. So after Danzig just turned tail, one can only imagine there was probably some resentment between the parties going on. As Danzig grew to increasing success on his solo tour, it extended to an increased interest in Misfits' own back catalog during their initial years, with Sam Hain frontman, which led to a series of reissues for which Danzig himself overdubbed many of the instruments to avoid paying royalties. Yeah. Only and Doyle ended up suing Danzig to get their royalty payments, even though they admitted that though Danzig wrote most of the lyrics and music, they wrote 25 or maybe 30% and deserved compensation.
Wow.
Which is kind of an odd flex.
Yeah, I'll say that is beefy.
Yeah. Over time, however, Only stopped pursuing the songwriting credits and instead sought the rights to use the Misfits' name and imagery to tour as a band again. After a long legal battle, Only and Doyle reached a settlement that allowed him to perform under the Misfits banner again, with a percentage of merchandising rights going to Danzig. And that's where the Michale Graves era begins, in 1995. The band did go on a brief hiatus after tensions arose between them, leading Graves and drummer Dr. Chud to abruptly quit mid-performance at a House of Blues show in Florida. When the band returned from hiatus in 2001, Jerry Only recruited a selection of ringers to fill out the group, including Des Cadena, who's on here, Marky Ramone of the Ramones, and some others. Doyle was not invited, though. He ended up being fired by Jerry Only in favor of Cadena after he learned of his firing from a handwritten note stuck under the windshield of his truck while he was at work.
So I want to tie it back to Dr. Chud real quick. So he left in the middle of a gig. He just like got up.
Yeah. Both him and Michale Graves just like, bye-bye.
Yeah. Chud, done. Just threw down his stick. I really hope he said Chud, done.
Chud mad.
Chud
done.
leave. You play.
Chud leave. Chud go to Depot's Tacos with Mike Graves. Depot's Tacos, that's in Ayer, Massachusetts. Why would you go all the way out here?
Yeah, you're in Florida. That's a long walk.
Yeah.
Chud have time.
Chud have lots of thinking to do.
Chud need to think.
Yeah.
Everybody talking at Chud. Chud don't hear a word they're saying.
Everybody chuds sometimes.
Understandably, Doyle would go on to play with Danzig instead, whom he would tour with a number of times and have his new project called Gorgeous Frankenstein produced by him. Cool. In an interview with punknews.org in 2011, Doyle indicated that a Misfits reunion with Danzig had been in the works as early as 2002, but it was being held up by Only and his manager, who, in his words, put a fucking monkey wrench in it.
Yeah. Idiot.
As if that all wasn't enough, Danzig ended up filing a new lawsuit against Only in 2014, accusing him of registering trademarks for everything Misfits related in 2000 behind his back, which violated their initial contract allowing Only to perform as the Misfits again, stating that Only entered deals with merchandisers to cut Danzig out of any profits from merchandise bearing the Misfits likeness from his or any period in the group, of which most Misfits fans associate with the group. I mean, this lawsuit would eventually lead to the full band being reunited in 2016, but still, Jerry Only seems like kind of a prick.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. That makes sense.
Yeah, every band's got one. But he
kept
it going, I guess. But it sounded like he wanted to take over, and he did. And this, these 16 gems are the result.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh, yes, and gems they most certainly are.
Let's get on to
gems like our next track number 11. This one titled Jack the Ripper.
As much as you can stand, I'm breathing down your neck.
Okay, I was being sarcastic before, but this is actually really good.
now you've had some chance to digest it.
Yeah.
Truly wrap your head around the eccentricities.
Like we've been kvetching this whole time about like how it doesn't sound like classic Misfits, and now we kind of got it right here.
Yeah, this kind of helped.
But we don't get the croon though. Like he's not trying to do it, which is refreshing. But do we miss it?
Right.
Good point.
Is it? Yeah, I mean, is it staying in canon with the
Misfit song
Misfits
now?
Catalog? Maybe
Right.
not. But we did get something a little different.
It sounds like he doesn't give a fuck. Yeah.
The reason for that, of course, is because Des Cadena wrote it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Does he sing this one?
And he's singing.
Yeah, he wrote it. He sings lead vocals on it, too.
That'll do it.
And he just he sounds like he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Kind of the Ace Frehley.
As well, he should
all
not.
over it.
Very Ace
That
Frehley.
makes a lot of sense. He's the Ace Frehley of this situation.
Yeah.
He just
Now
wants
watch me shred this Les Paul.
He just wants to have a good time, man. Just wants to
The
spook and scare.
malevolent order.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one
With
is
my
actually pretty
sword.
good. With my sword.
Yeah.
So this one is actually pretty good, I feel like. At the same time, though, I feel like it's kind of a case of too little, too late for them to switch out to a more traditional sound, like 11 tracks in.
Yeah, you almost wish they utilized them a little more. Because this feels more authentically punk than any of these other tracks.
Sorry, what'd you say?
No, I agree, Pat. But did either of you read the lyrics? Like, is he supposed to be a character? Is he supposed to be Jack the Ripper?
Oh, goodness.
Trying to figure out what was the reason for him singing this track.
I skimmed, like, the lyrics when I was researching this initially, and it's definitely, if it is supposed to be Jack the Ripper, it's a ton more subtle than, like, all the previous stuff. Because that could also just be sort of read as a very typical, like, 80s hardcore, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you song sort of thing like that as well.
Yeah.
I still can't help but feel they're, like, going down the spooky Rolodex and just, like, I don't know, that they got a song about a mummy, and then there's like another one about aliens, and now they got one about like a serial killer from like the Victorian age. Like, I don't know.
You think they're just going down a checklist?
I think so. Like, what do we got?
Like
next?
Jerry only standing in the studio with a clipboard. Like, all right, what do we got left?
We need the Frankenstein song, and then we got to have the song about the purple people eaters.
Did we do one about brains yet?
Monster song. We're not going to write a song about Cookie Monster. Come on, Des. We're not going to do the Cookie Monster song. All right, the tacos are here. We're going to eat. We're going to split these up, and then we'll talk after we've eaten. I don't talk while I'm eating.
Chud hungry.
Okay, throat shut another steak. He likes London broil.
You're probably not going to like this next song. You're probably not going to enjoy this next song then, Pat.
No?
If you're not enjoying the whole
maybe.
checklist conceit.
All right, what's the next one?
Track number 12 is titled Monkey's Paw.
Tonight, I cast this spell with this monkey's paw. 3 wishes for you. Tonight, I cast this spell with this monkey.
I didn't notice this until now, but he sounds awfully happy about it.
God.
To be casting spells at people.
This song is so stupid. What did they do? Watch an episode of the fucking Treehouse of Horror?
You know that's actually referring to a short story from like the 1900s,
yes,
right?
I know. I know, but like I don't think these guys are that smart. They watched fucking Treehouse of Horror with me. That's where they got the fucking idea from.
Oh boy.
So this song was co-written by Daniel Ray, and he's known for his work with the Ramones.
Yeah.
And they have, like we said before, they have a fair share of like early bubblegum rock and roll stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this track is definitely the most prevalent. Like it's just Spectre all over it. You could hear Ronnie Spector singing it.
It's
totally.
ridiculously bubblegum. And
Is this the one with the
so
female
silly.
vocals at the end?
Sorry?
It is silly.
Sorry?
Is this the one with the female vocals at the end?
No.
Oh no, that's coming up in a bit.
Oh, sorry.
And it has an even dumber name.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow, that one, yeah.
But yeah, now I want to hear like a New York like girl group from the 60s do Misfit songs.
So yeah, at this point in the record, this is probably my...
when you cry.
at this point in the record, this is probably the lowest point for me. I don't remember if there's lower points coming up, but this is definitely one that is like probably the most noticeably offensive right off the bat.
Yeah, this I kind of agree. I thought was the nadir of it until I got to the next track.
Oh man, what was the next track?
Should we just get to it?
Okay.
Sounds like we should.
I feel like if you're a Misfits fan, like even if you're like into the whole imagery and everything, like even when it gets to this track, you're just gonna be like, all right, they were joking.
Oh boy, sounds like we should just get to it now. Here's track number 13, titled "Where Do They Go?"
Where do they go? Where do the girls go? Where do the girls go? Where do the girls go? I just don't know. Where do the girls go? Where do the girls?
Ooh, breathe.
Yikes!
What? Why not? Why not?
Jerry.
Gary, this wasn't on the list.
If you wanted to just end the Misfits back in 2011 and start a Boris Pickett cover band, why didn't you just do it?
Should want girl vocals.
Good
It would
God.
be eminently more respectable than whatever this thing is.
Wow, this was bad. The last track was fucking bubblegummy. This just doesn't belong here.
Again, like I guess like in 2011 the sequence of tracks was not really a thing anymore, right? Unless you're a music nerd and still buy albums.
Right.
But they're putting two of songs that are very similar next to each other. Like why? Was the first
They
one
did that
to kind of prep us?
They did that a few times on this album. Where they sequenced things that just sounded too similar next to each other. There was a couple that were like kind of the same tempo, same key, right next to each other, to the point where I didn't even notice that the track changed. But this one,
spread 'em out.
Wow, is like
Yeah,
very noticeably more offensive.
That's a great way to make the tone cohesive and, stable.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, I don't know if this is the case or not, but I feel like Jerry Only's just like impression of Glenn Danzig has just gotten significantly worse over the course of the album.
Oh yeah, like he recorded it all in sequence and just like, buddy, if you don't want to take a break or something, nope, I got this. I got this.
Oh boy.
Take a knee, buddy.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Mouthful
This is
of tacos.
To call it back to our last episode. This would have been so much better if it was just a Jerry Only like side project album, in the same way that No Talking Just Head should have been a Tom Tom Club record. This should have just been a Misfits side project. Like, the only reason I'm guessing it bears the Misfits label is so Only wouldn't lose the gravy train he's been just sort of riding all this time.
Yeah.
Right, and this is them, or Jerry Only anyway, developing the brand a little further into whatever this is.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. He's developing the brand. He's trying to reach
like
new
I said,
audiences.
we're talking about a band, we're talking about a band 30 years in, and like I said, like when I was little, like I didn't know them as a band. I knew them as a T-shirt,
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure that's how a lot of people know them.
The third generation of this band, he's, like, what are we doing now? Who are the Misfits? Who am I?
Yeah. You know what's kind of tough about getting into the Misfits, too, is they don't really have like albums. You kind of have to like get into their collections to sort of get a full scope of
I did the whole discography in prep for this, and it's confusing because you have the first album and the second album, which is technically the first one, but it wasn't released, but is somehow better quality. I don't know.
They do have albums before the Michale Graves era, but for the longest time they were a strictly singles band.
Yeah, I think that was part of it, is that they like American Psycho was kind of their first like fully realized album. Everything they were kind of doing before that were either like EPs or things that were kind of like thrown together into compilations.
I guess for like an underground band and an underground punk scene, that's not that weird to just strictly have 7 inches.
Right.
But I mean, listening to it now, like it's odd to grasp their catalog.
Right. I don't think they ever had a. I don't think they were ever signed to a major label while they were together, or is any of their stuff beholden to a label now?
Yeah, the label of this is Misfits.
For a while, they were on Roadrunner Records, but I guess that's like the biggest they've ever gotten.
Okay.
All right. These next two tracks I'm just going to play back to back because there is barely any discernible difference between the two of them.
Good.
So here we go. Track number 14. This one titled Sleepwalking.
I know there's disaster from the nightmare in my bed. Damn it, Lord, don't you know I'm just sleepwalking again. Wake up. Wake up.
And after that, we got track 15, Ghost of Frankenstein.
I shall rise up from this somber grave and walk this world just to see you die. Endlessly, I wait until the day you come face to face with the ghost.
You can't see it, but everyone in the chat just looks so bored and defeated.
I actually kind of got to disagree with you. I kind of like Sleepwalking.
Really?
I thought that it kind of has this, like, I don't know, this sort of like dirty white boy, like white boy blues vibe to it. That's kind of like groovy and fun. And then this next track, Ghost of Frankenstein, just goes right back into like vanilla punk for me. Yeah, I just felt like the Sleepwalking actually had a little more stank to it, and that one was co-written by the producer Ed Stasium. So there's probably some little bit of intellect getting injected there, I guess.
It's different. I'll give it that. Sleepwalking.
I guess that's the difference between you and me, Pat, because I do not like white boy blues music.
No, you shouldn't. That wasn't really the word term I was looking for. I don't know, just like add this kind of like southern rock vibe to it that I thought was like a nice change of pace. It kind of, his vocal delivery actually didn't sound too out of place.
It's slow and boring.
Yeah.
I mean, Ghost of Frankenstein, the latter track, you get that nice cello or whatever in the beginning. Is that the Ebo? Maybe.
No, I think it's an actual.
Maybe.
No, it's a violin.
Violin. Oh,
played by Karen Olvin.
I feel
is
stupid.
The musician's name.
Yeah. Again, it does sound like it goes with a musical. Like I can hear different parts of a story here, whatever the story is. And I've noticed most of the tracks on this album, they all kind of close in a musical theater type way. They're all kind of very hard stops.
Yeah,
A little bit, yeah.
I noticed that too. The violin at the beginning kind of made me think of a Green Day song. What was the one that they had that like began? It was a single they had like around 97. It was off of Nimrod.
Oh, Hitchin' a Ride?
Yeah, Hitchin' a Ride.
Yeah.
There we go. That one. Yeah, it made me think of that song.
Yeah.
This better be one hell of a sci-fi sound effects montage is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, do we have any samples of it?
We might just. Oh, man. Track number 16, the final track, the other Des Cadena track. Take us home, Des Cadena. Here's track 16, Death Ray.
I can see the death ray within your eyes. I can see the death ray within.
Man, and here I was just talking about Too Little Too Late. Like, again, another solid piece of hardcore that they hid at the very end of the album.
Yeah. Here we go. Finally, a fucking punk beat. It took us 16 tracks, but we finally got a punk song out of this.
Yeah,
But maybe
is
this a sense of closure for the album? Like we're gonna leave you with an old school track?
It definitely doesn't feel like a last track to me at all. And yeah, Dez's delivery again is like way more palatable somehow because he's not trying so hard. And in that way, it kind of makes it more like nihilistic and you know what I kind of want out of punk music. A little more. You get
Yeah,
more,
I agree.
Yeah, I guess I get more out of it that way.
His presence on the album as a vocalist is pretty cool, but what's it doing here? I don't get it. I'm surprised Jerry only allowed this.
Yeah.
He had to take a break. He had too much
He's got
too much
tacos to
refried
eat.
beans. Those tacos took a number on him.
I feel like it's incredibly telling that two of the strongest tracks on this album are ones that only had no hand in writing.
Right.
Yeah.
And where the hell is my sci-fi sound effects montage? We've spent all this time and I still haven't gotten my goddamn sci-fi sound effects
I believe it's
montage.
Where is
I
it?
think it's the end.
I'm about ready to call the goddamn manager. Where's the friggin' 3-person sci-fi sound effect montage? I demand recompense. Oh, there it is.
Cool.
Remember when you're like 7 years old, like running around your parents' basement, like with your friends, like making finger guns at each other, going pew 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 pew.
That's exactly what
That's all
that
it
is.
is.
Certain bits of it kind of remind those little toy microphones that had like those springs in them.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
That made everything sound all
I was just going
delayed
to
and
bring
stuff.
up the Zoob tube. I don't know if anyone remembers that thing. This was like a toy in the very early 90s that had like a spring in it, and it was like a long tube, probably about like that long. And there's like a little hole cut into it with that spring, and you could like make those fucking crazy
I love
thunder
those.
noises with it.
That's exactly this was like end of the day. They just wanted to sit around and play around with toys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they called it sci-fi sound effects, which just like further shows that how infantile these guys are. I don't know how else to put it.
How weird
don't
is that
know.
they use the term sci-fi sounds and that Smash Mouth album did the same thing? Like, is that a common thing in the industry? Like, what do we credit him as? Sci-fi sounds.
To be fair, the Smash Mouth album called it sci-fi styling.
I think we're dealing with a similar amount of brain cells between the two camps.
Oh man. We're finally done with it though, so let's get to our final thoughts, shall we?
Yeah, let's sign off on this puppy.
Pat, do you think this is a worst of all time album?
I don't. I don't think there's really enough offense on it to call it that, and not enough controversy. I think it's just fan servicing and I compare it to like when big franchises open up shops on like Newbury Street or things like, or just these areas where they don't expect to get a lot of traffic, but they're literally
Mall
just
storefronts.
they're just keeping a store open, like honestly, just for brand awareness, and for like nothing else. And this just feels like, and thinking back to that the Heads record that we did last week, it's a band kind of floundering in their later years, without their original vocalist, trying to boil down what made them great to a formula, like 4 or 5 things, and then just like taking those things and trying to, rearrange it in all these different ways, but you end up just kind of coming up with fucking vanilla pudding. So it's not great. It's very boring. I really, it was only 50 minutes long. It felt much longer, probably because of the track count. A lot of them kind of meshed together, and didn't stick out to me. Yeah, it's, I guess, just okay enough to keep a brand going.
Same question for you, Dante. Do you think this is a worst of all time album?
I do not think it's a worst of all time album. I think it's the worst Misfits album for sure. I hear a band that just kind of doesn't know what to do with itself. First original material in 10 years. Would this album have been better if they kind of went all in on like a punk sound? Maybe back to like their original Walk Among Us type stuff. I think it would have been, but like Pat said, they're sticking with their brand, and they're obviously leaning towards their theater aspect of their music and not their punk rock side. And you've got to, again, to realize you've got basically a new lineup here aside from Jerry only.
Very true.
So, and I guess, with Jerry only at the helm, the dynamic had changed over the years. But I'd be very curious to know how Danzig felt about this album, and if he was on it, would it have been better with the same mindset, or just shit? And I wanted to point out, if you look at the cover of this album, it's like a skull man in like the death cape, and he's stepping on top of a girl that's scared and screaming, and they both have kind of like a mocking look on their face, like like scary shit, right? And even the girl doesn't look totally scared. She's like make fun of a scared girl, like, and so that's kind of sums up the album for me.
I'm not even buying Skullface, to be honest. He's kind of giving you this look like, this doing anything for you?
Yeah, I didn't even like register that until you pointed it out, and now that's all I see. Just him going like, look what I'm doing.
And that's what this album is to me. It's just like, Misfits, right?
You like this, right?
Huh? Fucking kids. You'll like this.
As for me, like, on the surface, I recognize there isn't especially wrong with the music being played here, but it still repelled me with its complete unimpressiveness. Like, listening to it to review, it just felt more and more like a slog and an obligation. Like, does that make any sense? Like, I found this album so unremarkable beyond Jerry Only's weird vocal delivery that it made me just hate it.
Yeah, it kind of just made me question what the fuck we're doing with our lives.
I gotta say, like, it really
being so
it
bored.
really made me want to listen to the other Misfits albums. Like, at least 3 or 4 times going through it, like, man, I would love to listen to like American Psycho right now. So it kind of, because there's this little pieces in it, like, oh yeah, like I like the Misfits, just not this.
Right.
So yeah, I won't categorize it as a worst of all time album in the most borderline sense, but I did not enjoy this album, like, on the whole. Like, even the bits that I said were pretty good, like, can't really make up for just all the terrible mistakes that were made.
Yeah.
And, like, if nothing else, what this album's done for me is sort of give a greater appreciation for just what a big douchebag Jerry Only is.
The world needed to know.
Not to suggest that Danzig is somehow less of a douchebag. They both have their incredibly douchebaggy behavior, but man, talk about not living up to an ethos. Yeah. Oh, and as long as I'm digging myself a big old trench to live in with Misfits fans, the Devilock looks fucking stupid. Yeah. Come at me with your alfalfa-looking asses all you want. You look ridiculous. And feel free to come on the podcast and discuss Love Beach with us.
That too.
All the Misfits fans.
Oh, there's a lot.
What was your best or least bad track on the album, Pat?
Whew. So this was tough. I think overall the album was like way too cleanly produced. So it was like really hard for me to get into anything. I'm gonna actually go with Sleepwalking because it reminded me of the first Danzig album, which I actually kind of like. The one with Mother on it, and Twist a Cane, and like those were kind of his like first big early hits. It's just like a great stupid meathead rock record from like the mid 80s. And that song kind of had some of that like that vibe or even like, that was my choice.
What was your best or least bad track, Dante?
Cold in Hell. It's fun. Every punk band deserves one Chukka Chukka song, and I'm a sucker for that. And it's just fun. I didn't take any of the imagery seriously, but it's enjoyable to listen to. Makes you want to dance.
For me, I had to force myself, like as a rule, not to pick any Des Cadena songs. If I was allowing myself that, then I would have picked Death Ray. But since I'm forcing myself to stick to the Jerry Only songs, I'm gonna say for me, Father was probably the one that pulled off like their whole, spooky, scary conceit like the smoothest. Now, what would you say is the worst track, Pat? Even though I have a good idea what it is for all three of us.
I think I'll join the Whole Tandon Club and pick Where Do They Go. That was just obnoxious and cloying. Although Monkey's Paw was a really close second, just because of how the bubblegumness of it compared with the lyrical imagery was just completely absurd and embarrassing. But yeah, I'm going to go with Where Do They Go? That song sucked.
Same question for you, Dante. Worst track?
I'm going to say Sleepwalking, actually. It's just... I'm sorry, Pat. I'm sorry. It's
fine.
It's just slow and boring for me. Like, why? Why is this here?
As for me, I'm obviously going to say Where Do They Go, but I kind of agree with Pat that Monkey's Paw was also very just eye-rollingly bad.
That's putting it perfectly. Yeah, my eyes were fucking rolled way off to the side during that whole song. I was like, what are you guys doing?
But we're finally finished. We got through it.
We did.
Yay.
My internet only went out once.
The devil's in your computer.
Thank you for being on the podcast, Dante.
Oh yeah, I've been a fan of the show for a long time, so this is very nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, what do you got going on? You got some music to plug?
Oh yeah. I'm happy to say my band's EP, Brosiopath, is on Spotify right now and the internet, anywhere. And another band I play in, Zombie Sunday. We have some new material coming out soon, so look out for that. And maybe one day we'll get to play shows again.
Yeah, man.
That would be nice.
That would be really nice. Yeah, and I would love any excuse to come down to New York City and come see you play.
Yeah, I heard they closed the Middle East.
Very rad.
Is that a real thing up there?
They are in the process of closing it, or I don't know if I don't know what happened.
They did also just close Great Scott, though.
That happened, too.
You got anything you want to plug, Pat?
Nah, not this week.
I'll plug On the Town with Mikey D is back in a podcast-ish sort of form. Very nice. Pat and I are going to be hosting that again coming soon.
Very exciting.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Check that out at WMFO.org.
Yep.
And I guess that'll about does it.
That'll about does it.
Edit point. I guess that'll about does it for this episode. Our theme song is Sunny Day by the band Froggy and the Friendship. Check them out at froggyandthefriendship.bandcamp.com. If you have an album you want to suggest to us to review or would just like to leave us some feedback or a comment, email us at jukeboxzerospodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/jukeboxzerospodcast or on Twitter at twitter.com/jukeboxzeros. You can find us, rate us, review us, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Or check out our archive main page at Spreaker.com/show/jukebox-zeros. Jukebox Zeros is a production of the Zero Science Network. For more great podcasts, go check out zero-science.com. That about does it for Jukebox Zeros. I'm Lils.
Patrick.
And remember...
Hey, you want something to eat? I could go make you something in our haunted kitchen.
Bonzo! We want something to eat!
Science.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! 3 local idiots form podcast!
Hey, all you out there in podcast land. Are you bored? Maybe you're sitting in traffic? Or maybe you're toiling away behind your desk at that dead-end job you just can't fucking stand anymore. Have I got a solution for you? Why not mosey on over to that search bar at the top of your favorite podcast app? Don't worry, I'll wait. Type in Old Men Yell at Cloud, a podcast where 3 unqualified musicians rifle through their vinyl collections and discuss their unwarranted opinions for everyone to enjoy or not enjoy. Check it out on the Zero Science Podcast Network.